I just shot 20 minutes worth of video, and apparently this thing has recorded none of it. In the spirit of unity and to encourage other women to come out and start talking about their experiences with sexual harassment in the workplace, I wanted to talk about I actually have had to write a list. Excuse me. The experiences I've had with sexual harassment in the workplace, and it's been pretty extensive. I'll start with the most significant of my earlier years when I was 17, mind you, 17, underage, 17, working at an Italian chain restaurant in Franklin, Tennessee. My job was to be an expediter, which is essentially quality control for the food that is being sent out, making sure that steaks go out at the right temperature, things get garnished properly, plates all go to the right table, that orders go out correctly, that kind of thing. Friday, Saturday night, it's really busy, it's really tense. I was one of 3 women that worked in the back of the kitchen. I was considered back of the house. Front of the house was like waiters, hostesses, stuff like that. Back of the house, I was somewhere in between, and I was the go-between. My executive chef, who was my boss, the guy I stood in front of, and who called the board, was essentially telling which chefs to start cooking what when, because a steak takes longer to cook than, say, a pizza or a pasta dish. He was basically Gordon Ramsay with less cursing, but he made people cry more often. He would dig into your soul. I don't know how he did it, but I was like one of the few people that could take him. And I to this day love the guy. I think he's great. Nothing bad to say about him. In fact, worked with him again in another location for the same restaurant chain in another state. It was a guy's line. I mean, it was a bunch of cooks, grill chefs. There was one girl who worked pizza. Shout out to the girl in Kentucky. Other than that, it was like me in front of a line of guys all day long. So, I mean, I heard stuff, and, I was cool about it. I was just, kind of almost one of the guys. They'd come in, complain about their girlfriends. I heard, the B word left, right, and center, this, that, and the next. It was not a thing. To actually be, any kind of a real, uptight feminist, oh, I feel sexism in the workplace, you couldn't be that kind of person and have this job. As a woman, you weren't going to make it. But, my exec chef kept it all kind of in check, and he made sure that the guys listened to me and they respected me, because, we were in the middle of a Saturday night, and, there was a 10 top, and half of it came back wrong. You'd have your manager, literally at one point, our manager came down the line with a chair ready to throw it at the pizza cook who was new because he had to buy a $200 table on the spot. And that's how that restaurant ran. If you went in and complained about anything at all, didn't go perfectly to plan as far as your dish, it was paid for. And so it was extra pressure on the kitchen to make sure everything ran smoothly all the time. I had executive chef is above a sous chef. Sous chefs work the line. If the executive chef's not there, they call the board. Essentially, they're in charge of the kitchen when the exec chef's not there. They hired a guy, and he came in, and he had a bit of a drinking problem, so I had a bit of sympathy for him, and he ended up asking me for a ride home one day, and then proceeded to stop at a gas station. I stopped at a gas station. He proceeded to go in and buy me a rose, which was kind of sweet, but not what I wanted. We were very near our executive chef's house, who I actually babysat his kids. I knew his wife, I knew his family, the whole bit. So we stopped by, and I kind of dropped him off there and left him there. I was like, all right, well, I gotta go. That'll get you the rest of the way home. He couldn't drive. I think something had happened to his license. In any case, I was 17. They hired another guy. and his name was Cliff. And I'm going to go ahead and put his name out there because the whole point of this is name and shame, right? These guys need to be held accountable. And that's never going to happen if we just keep kind of glossing over and, oh, a couple of bad apples. You know, it's never going to work like that. So, they hired this guy, and he couldn't call a board to save his life. There'd be 10 tickets, say 10 tables on the floor. You know, say they were all 5 tops. You'd get 2 dishes from each ticket, and they'd all sit there getting cold, waiting for the rest of the food to come out because he couldn't call a board to save his life to make sure all the food came out properly and well timed. So all of that is going on. He sucks at his job. He can't cook. He can't call a board, and he's really, really sexist and really verbally inappropriate with me. Now, these guys have to have a certain level of respect for me because if a dish comes back, if something needs to be fixed, I have to be able to tell them, you know, this needs to be fixed on the fly, and they have to just kind of do it. A lot of times, the exec chef would leave me the board, and I'd be calling the board and sending the food out at the same time. A lot of exec chefs do that anyway because they want to check their own food as it goes out. That's not how it was done in this place, but sometimes that's how it was done when I had to do it. As this man is sitting there making commentary about my breasts, about, you know, how I look good, about how he'd like to taste me, all of this other kind of stuff, slowly the respect and the speed with which these guys are willing to respond to me is falling off. You know, this guy can talk to me like trash, so why should they have to cook a steak any faster because my big-titted ass said so? I'm about 5'6". The counter where we stacked all the plates, kept all the towels, kept everything that was my job to make sure was straight and ready for the night, came up to about chest level. So I was very often pressed forward against it at chest level, which would make certain attributes more pronounced. And on one occasion, he looked at me and he said, "You do that intentionally, don't you? You just like it. You like to push him up there so I have to look at him, but yeah, you like it." And it was all I could do not to punch him in the face. Things came to a climax when I was walking into the kitchen, he was walking out of the kitchen, and I had a ponytail, you know, because you pull your hair back when you're working with food. And it's not like it would have been difficult to identify had somebody's food come back with a hair in it. It had been mine because I've got super curly hair. So, anyway, grabs me by my ponytail, slams me up against a tile wall, and says, "I want to ride you like a pony." Now, mind you, this guy's in his early 30s. He's a sous chef there. He's fairly new. I'm 17. At this point, I've just had enough. You know, he's making my life a living hell. He can't call a board. Everybody knows it. Management knows it. I know it. I can't even take over and call the board for him because the guys working under him, when he's there, don't respect me. When the exec chef's there, they listen. They know what they can get away with and what they can't get away with which sous chefs and which managers. So finally I have a sit down with the general manager and the executive chef. And the exec chef, obviously, as I said, being kind of a friend, looked me straight in the face and was like, "He's gone now. You want him gone? You want him fired? It's done. It's over. I'll kick his ass out the door right now." And me being the soft-hearted, kind, nice, sweet, forgiving, everybody should have a second chance to evolve, somewhat overly forgiving person that I could be, especially at that time, said, no, it's fine. You know, I didn't want it to be any bigger a deal than it needed to be. Just talk to him. Well, just talk to him turned into everyone in the place found out, and commentary started being made about, oh, the rat. We've got a rat in the building. Waiters would drop tickets off, especially like some of the male waiters. "Oh, I'm going to turn the ticket in here. I better make sure it's all right. I wouldn't want to get ratted on." And this would go on daily. And this went on until finally it peaked on a Saturday night. The entire vibe had changed now. There was no joking. There was no fun. There was no anything. You know, I was now that chick. I was that girl you had to be careful what you said stuff in front of. Forget the fact that the guy had physically grabbed me and slammed me against a wall, you know, and wanted to ride me. So before this had happened, and I made another note here for myself to remember this incident, there was a manager there. He was not the general manager, but he was like an assistant manager. And he had walked up to me at the beginning of a shift and randomly put his hand on the small of my back and told me that I looked good enough to put on a plate and sop up with a biscuit. As you do. Welcome to work. This was a company that I probably had a future with. The same manager, this biscuit man, as I shall refer to him, had told me that, you know, I absolutely had what it took to go into management. I was 17 years old. It could easily have been the start of a career. I wouldn't have had to pay for college. I wouldn't have to go to college. I would have been making as much as I would have ever made teaching within a year and a half, 2 years. I just had to train. I already knew the back of the house. I knew the front of the house. I'd been working. My first job ever was when I was 11 years old in an Italian restaurant. I'd grown up with a Sicilian godfather who ran Italian restaurants. So this was like, I bled spaghetti sauce as far as anything was concerned having to do with this. It would have been no thing. The incident with Cliff, he ride me like a pony man, led to me walking out, and the harassment from the rest of the staff, specifically the male members, because they will gang up on you. The guys that he was friends with, that he'd hang out with after work and stuff. So, you know, the constant rat comments. It led to me basically walking out in the middle of a shift on a Saturday night, which is game over, because you've just buried the kitchen as an expediter. Your job is to make sure the food gets out. If you don't make sure the food gets out, nobody knows you're gone for 30, 40 minutes. From what I heard later from a friend of mine who still worked there, it was absolute pandemonium and chaos. And I ended up actually working for them again later because the executive chef that I mentioned, I worked with him. He pulled strings for me later at a different location in another state that I just happened to move to, where he just happened to be opening a new store. So, and he was great. To this day, like I said, I love Gordon Ramsay. He reminds me so much of that exec chef, and he was just so tough but effective, but tough when he needed to be, because there was a reason to be. Other than that, he was the nicest guy in the world. The other incident I want to speak to refers directly to the video I made about sexism in Hollywood. And I tried to be really general and really polite about it, but I don't think really general and really polite is going to work at this point. These guys that are doing this shit are complete assholes. They don't care. They're not concerned about your feelings. They're concerned about their egos. And when you have that much money and that much power, and especially with the person I'm going to talk about, with the stage he was at his career, at the absolute pinnacle of his career, you know, it's just kind of, they can do whatever they want, and they know it. And I am referring to the remake of Miami Vice that was shot in South Beach, I believe about 2005, in which I was an extra, and Jamie Foxx starred in it. We were at a club called Mansion, where they shot a scene that turned out to be about 5 minutes worth of the movie, but took about 14 hours to shoot. So major respect to the people in the industry who redo that and redo that and relive it and you know, do 140 scenes and have to make it look fresh every time. I had minored in theater. I had been offered a position as an extra. One of the PAs said, "Hey, you want to come along?" Cool. I'm in a red bustier with a short little black skirt on, black fishnets, black go-go boots, and there are stools, and I see a girl dancing on a stool across the way, and I'm like, oh, there's a stool here, I'll stand and dance on this one. And you don't dance to actual music. At least in this production, you didn't. The song was Numb by Linkin Park, and I was a big fan, and you can refer also to my video on depression and suicidal ideation that I'll post on YouTube, and I'll also post a link, it's already on my blog, down below. But obviously Chester Bennington killed himself earlier this year. And there aren't always signs and warning signs, so that's one of the reasons I made that video. It's to kind of let people know a little bit what you can look for in cycles of depression. Anyway, back to the sexual harassment incident. Jamie Foxx walks in. Turns out he's what we've been waiting for. We've been standing around for a while. This whole thing took about 14 hours. It was epic. But anyway, when you dance to a click track, which is essentially just a click sound that represents what the beat of the music will be when they edit it in later. So we're all practicing, we do the scene a few times. Okay, so everybody practice dancing around. This is what you're going to be doing. And you're literally being directed. I think this was Michael Mann telling us what we're supposed to be doing in the background. So click track and not shooting, sitting there waiting around. Jamie Foxx walks in, croons a little bit, does his R&B singing thing, and he's feeling his oats. He's fresh off an Oscar win for Ray. You can kind of get the vibe. He's the man, and it's like, okay, whatever. There's props, respect. Obviously you've got skills. You've got the little gold man to prove it. He walks in with his entourage, and pardon me, a whole bunch of shaky here. He walks in with his entourage, which is about 4 or 5 guys worth, and 4 or 5 guys proceed to form a circle around me as I dance on this little black stool, kind of practicing my little dancing that I'm going to do, and they're forming a little group, like tighter and tighter, kind of checking me out and looking at me straight up like they can't decide which hole to stick it in first, like I'm at a strip club and it's just going down. So I'm kind of like, okay, this is interesting. And the next thing I know, and the black skirt I was wearing was very thin material, so I could actually feel it move. This is how close he was behind me. Jamie Foxx walks up behind me, gets as close to my ass as I think he possibly could without really touching it, and goes, ghetto. And I think that was supposed to be a compliment. I didn't really know what to do at this point. I was kind of at a loss. This is, if I say something, who are they going to get rid of? I'm an extra making, who needs, an extra couple $100. He just won an Oscar. What's the point? In the meantime, these guys, they're like salivating over here. There's about 5 of them. What am I supposed to do? Michael Mann finally walks between me and these guys, and he's like, okay, chill out, calm it down, all right, guys, cool. They back up some. No pulling aside of Jamie Foxx, no admonishment of, hey, look, this isn't how we treat women on the set. This isn't how we treat our extras. This isn't how we act with coworkers. And that's why this industry in specific is so special and especially abusive to women, because it is so power-based. It's all about who's the hottest thing. That's it. It's not going to matter if you're an up-and-coming starlet if you're dealing with somebody who's got 8 Oscar trophies sitting on a ledge behind him. It's just not going to matter how badly they disrespect you. And that's how I know this is true, and that's why I believe everything that everyone is saying about Harvey Weinstein right now and everything else that's coming out about Roy Price and Amazon Studios and all the rest of it. Because it is exactly like that. It is a chain of command, power-based, sexual power, you want a speaking part, maybe you're going to have to go into an office and blow a guy kind of situation. I have stayed away from that industry basically ever since and had nothing to do with it. Forget having had a minor in theater and actually really liking acting. It helped me get through the death of my mother. I specifically did a monologue in theater from a movie called Night Mother, a play/movie called Night Mother that ended up starring Sissy Spacek. If you ever want a real view into what suicidal depression looks like, at grassroots level, watch that movie. It's not light watching, I'll warn you up front. Sissy Spacek is an amazing actress, and she does a really great job of just kind of duplicating the numbness and the kind of sense of futility that tends to go with it, rather than the endless sobbing tears when everyone thinks that, when someone's really depressed, well, there were no signs. I don't understand. Why were they laughing 2 hours before they shot themselves in the mouth? That's not how depression works, and that movie helps indicate that very well. That aside, I didn't want to make this video, and I made a much more loose-based, less accusatory, more generic sexism in Hollywood video, which I've already posted, referring to the incident. And I didn't name and shame, and the reason I didn't do that is because Jamie Foxx has 2 daughters now, and I actually follow him on Instagram because I like to think that my suffering maybe leads to something better in life on occasion. That maybe now that he's got 2 daughters, he'll, maybe one of his daughters will experience that in the workplace. I would hope she wouldn't. But if she were to, maybe he would learn something from it. Maybe he would have a daughter and go, this isn't how I would want my daughter to be treated in the workplace, in an environment where she was at a disadvantage in a power situation, whatever. Like I said, here's hoping. I have actually written to him about it. I don't even know that he checks his own social media. Most of these people don't, I would say. More than likely they've got, assistants that handle that kind of stuff. But I've had no response. I've nothing in the way of an attempted apology, nothing in the way of, oh yeah, I remember you, nothing in the way of even, I'm sorry, who are you again? Nothing at all. And I would think, it's not like I would be looking to sue here. It's not like I had any interest in getting any money out of it. I just wanted acknowledgement of being a human being. Because as I said, there have been previous instances that have literally cost me potential careers. And this, again, was another incident that, I can't, who knows? Who knows? I lived in LA. I had thought about doing extra work, thought twice about it. Could have gone back out to LA, didn't want anything more to do with it after this experience. So it did affect me. And so I just want to put this out there to encourage other women. Social media is a new way. And I've experienced it. And there are people who know how I've experienced it. But I'm not going to say this was the defining moment of this guy's life. Like I said, he has 2 daughters now. He may well have changed his flavor on how women should be treated in the workplace, in general, whatever. So I would like to hope that that's the case. I'm not going to say this is the defining moment of his life. Obviously, he's done a lot of other things. I simply want us to start holding these people accountable when they do these things. I'm not saying that his life should be destroyed. I'm not saying anybody, and like I said, I'm not calling Gloria Allred or anything. I want to see things change. I want to see women in the future not have to go through this. I immediately got down off that stool and helped another girl get up on it. And she was kind of standing behind me and looked like she was kind of eager. And, basically I turned myself down. I pulled into myself. I retracted rather than grew from that experience, rather than it possibly taking me into something better, possibly in my future. So these are essentially cases of men stealing women's lives and women's life opportunities. And like I said, there are a lot of women who were turning down offers at, come in the office and we can talk about it and maybe you'll be the next big star. Wink, wink. The women who are talented and have the charisma and have the skills and have the background and the training and the know-how and, maybe they just lack the connections. and even women who are connected. Gwyneth Paltrow is connected in Hollywood. Angelina Jolie is connected. Her father is John Voight, I believe his name is. I mean, he's an incredibly well-known actor. If you have the testicular fortitude to do this to women who are well-connected, who know people, who are going to be believable and credible if they step forward with these stories, imagine the stuff that's happening to the women who aren't connected, who won't necessarily be as credible, who won't be believed, who nobody's going to care if they step forward. And so anyway, probably nobody's going to care that I'm stepping forward, but hashtag MeToo. And that's all I have to say about it. Because once all the stories start coming out, I mean, you're going to need wellies to wade through the knee-high filth to even begin to deal with this situation. And I watched an interview with Matt Damon and George Clooney kind of talking about, loosely and generic and a few bad apples, and we've got to reform the industry. And it's a joke. It's a joke. If Ben Affleck knew enough to tell Rose McGowan, I told him not to be so rapey, basically, to paraphrase. I told Harvey Weinstein to stop doing that. Everybody knew. And Matt Damon admitted that he knew in the interview. And so, and it's crazy because it's changed the way even that I view like guys as far as being potential protectors or defenders of women when it might be necessary, and changed my view on chivalry and how much of it really exists in the world. So in any case, I don't want this to go on any longer, but hashtag MeToo and just everybody start telling your story.